Hello friends, this is Adam with Movie Guy 365. In this video, I will be doing a direct comparison between the Criterion Collection and the BFI version of Seven Samurai on 4K. This video will not be a typical 4K review of BFI's Seven Samurai. I recently gave Criterion's 4K of the film a full review treatment, which I do encourage you to check out, and I will link in the comments down below. For this video, I will be doing a comparison between the two versions and my thoughts about which edition you may want to lean towards if you're only planning to pick up one copy of the film. On the surface, it may only look like the difference is the inclusion of HDR and Dolby Vision on the 4K provided by BFI, but there is a lot more, which I will now discuss. As always, I encourage you to share your thoughts and findings in the comments section below. Both versions of Seven Samurai on 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray have an aspect ratio of 1:37:1. Both have native 4K resolution. Criterion's version of the film does not support any HDR, whereas BFI fully supports HDR and Dolby Vision. As I commented on my Criterion review of their disc that the source itself was pretty clean, aside from a few blemishes here and there. On the BFI, which reportedly uses the same master from Toho, this does continue to hold true, though I found that blemishes were slightly more evident and easier to spot. I suspect this may have to do in small part with the application of Dolby Vision bringing these defects more to the surface. Nothing about this screamed deal breaker for me, but your sensitivity may differ in this area. On a related note, the disc encode on the BFI was surprisingly in line with Criterion's. Normally in these cases, such as the 7th Seal release by both labels, BFI is usually stronger in this area. Not so much with Seven Samurai, as it appears to be neck and neck. Grain structure, however, proved to be an interesting thing to witness on the BFI version. Criterion's was finely layered, though I distinctly pointed out instances of possible management as it minimized randomly here and there. On the BFI disc, this is even more the case. When it's present, it looks pretty great, though I found the attempted cleanups a bit more numerous than on Criterion's disc. Now, we're not talking about James Cameron or Paramount's levels of DNR applications, so no need to be concerned to that degree. For those well familiar with how the film has looked in the past, you'll notice differences more on the BFI version. Criterion just hides it better. Additionally, in darker scenes, BFI's grain is slightly heavier than Criterion's. Both versions are full 4K, so in terms of detail, this should be a wash, right? Not so fast. I found that in addition to Criterion resolving grain better, with it generally texture enhancement is given a slight edge to that disc. Is it a night and day difference? Certainly not, and those with smaller viewing setups would be hard-pressed to spot discernible differences. Before upgrading to my new 77-inch OLED, it may not have been as obvious with my old 65. Criterion's 4K textures show slightly more depth, especially concerning close-ups. Don't get me wrong, BFI still conveys a satisfactory image, but sometimes it isn't as pronounced when it comes to detail. With all that said, this is going to be most beneficial to the pixel counters out there, and differences are incremental for this particular sticking point. Now, for the reason why most have chosen to import the BFI version, the inclusion of HDR and Dolby Vision. As expected, the addition of the grading gives weight to the visuals with a richer and to the trained eye, a dramatic enhancement to contrast. Going back to Criterion's transfer, I still maintain that film's grayscale looks pretty solid with very stable whites. With BFI's transfer, these aspects are even more refined across the board. Side by side with Criterion, the picture offers more nuance in the visual aesthetic with the BFI disc. Highlights are understandably also more visually appealing with Dolby Vision here. This shot, for example, in the BFI version, you can easily make out more details around the clouds and landscape. On the 4K disc from Criterion, it's slightly less visible. There are numerous instances such as this spread across the film. Black levels in some cases do show better stability on the Criterion disc, such as in this shot. The BFI does often convey deeper blacks in shadows or night scenes, though it often tiptoes the line of crush. It, however, does not flat out obliterate detail in those instances. This will once again be more obvious to those who are most familiar with not only the film, but with what Dolby Vision can bring to the table. Believe it or not, one of the major differences between the two discs is going to be the translation of Japanese to English. Having watched both versions in their entirety, the BFI translation appears to take more of a literal interpretation of the Japanese language as opposed to a more Americanized translation in the Criterion. As being most familiar with the Criterion version, it was interesting to see the changes in words on screen, and ultimately, I don't feel I missed out on any important information with the BFI. It really only comes down to the more subtle nuances that are perhaps missing in that version. I personally think that either of the subtitle offerings are fine, but once again, I'm more used to Criterion's translation of the film. Going to the audio mixes for a moment, judging both tracks on their original mono, I found myself slightly favoring the DTS in the BFI edition of the film. Both tracks appear to be clean from the source, but I do feel the BFI mix is a bit stronger in its overall delivery. Once again, is it a game changer? No. In truth, either version will work, but for the purposes of this review, I just thought I would share my impressions. When it comes to extras, of course, the Criterion exclusives are not going to be found on the BFI version, but both the Criterion and the BFI share the Akira Kurosawa It Is Wonderful to Create documentary, which runs just under an hour. Unique to the BFI disc is the art of Akira Kurosawa, and it features Asian cinema expert Tony Raines, who talks about the famous director's career and influences. Neither of the audio commentaries from the Criterion release have made their way over to the BFI version, but there is a newly recorded audio commentary from film critic Adrian Martin. So, ultimately, at the end of the day, which version of Seven Samurai do I prefer on the 4K format? To be perfectly frank, it's closer than I really thought it would be. I would give the Criterion the edge in how the source condition looks and its general appearance in regard to blemishes and imperfections. The BFI brings out these faults more vividly, no doubt. In terms of visuals, grayscale, black levels, and highlights, this one, of course, goes to BFI. The highlights reveal much more in this version, as even the more subtle aesthetics are better dialed in. It's not perfect, as there is a slight bit of aforementioned crush, but it's in no way detrimental to the overall quality of the picture. As far as the translation, it's honestly a toss-up, but as I did say a little while ago, I'm more used to the version provided by Criterion, so for that, I would give it the nod. Factoring all these points and other aspects I mentioned, I'm going to give the BFI the win for this round. The HDR Dolby Vision Pass is nice with a more pleasing visual palette, though the Criterion still offers a cleaner looking transfer overall, and despite the lack of HDR, it's still missing the enhancement in bringing out the highlights. I would absolutely not fault anybody that chooses to stick with Criterion. I'll certainly be holding on to mine, but absolutely the BFI is a solid disc and well worth importing. So that was my comparison of the Criterion collection as well as BFI's 4K edition of Seven Samurai. If you are interested in picking up either copy for yourself, I will leave direct links in the comment section. But if you have either disc or both in your collection already, let me know your thoughts down below. In the meantime, please like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. So until next time, this is Adam with Movie Guy 365. I will see you at the movies.